Right. Buenos dias, todos y todas. I don't know, but
A
hey,
todos,
a todos. Okay,
to everybody.
that's right. Buenos dias a todos y tardes y oh, it's evening. I don't even know. Anyways, thanks for jumping on the code review weekly workshop. I have the first point on the agenda, so let me share my screen. And my humble point is pointing out sometimes these MRs that fix very specific glitches in very specific environments. So this is a crazy UI glitch only showing up in Safari, but I can't recreate it on my Safari, so it must be only in some people's Safaris. But Simon could recreate it. And it looks like, I don't think one of our team members, I think this is just a contributor contributed this issue that they were running into. Thankfully, someone on our team was able to recreate this in their environment. But we had a couple of iterations with the solution here. So one, when I'm reviewing this, I could just target, hey, does our change fix the issue? And I could spend 8 hours trying to really understand why this works on some environments and not other environments. And that's not going to be a profitable use of my time. But instead of that, I decided to just, Simon saying this fixes it. So that's great. We'll see. After we merge it, we can see the original issue author if that fixed their issue. But I'm mostly concerned about, are we causing more side effects, unintended side effects with our change? And the first draft, we definitely did. So thankfully, I was able to catch that by actually just running a quick smoke test. It was like, let me just open up one of these components that we're touching. And thankfully, it showed up pretty quickly. And then with the next fix that happened to fix Safari's bug was very no op-y. So I was feeling pretty confident about it, but I went ahead, did smoke test and everything looked good. But I did leave like just a non-blocking question just about the specific issue because I can't test that. But I was able to confirm there's not any issues here. So felt confident merging it, even though I don't really know if it's gonna fix the problem. I'm kind of trusting Simon, but I think both of us are just trusting after we merge all this, if the original issue contributor can confirm if this fixed it or not for them. Sometimes that's the only way to really find out. So I thought that was interesting example. Is very it's a very clear example of making profitability decisions when reviewing MRs. So I just want to share that.
Good call.
Yeah, so I have to protect myself from getting nerd sniped because like sometimes
I relate to that so much.
when things don't behave like they should, and especially when it's like non-deterministic, there's something inside my brain that wants to find the determinism in the non-determinism.
It has to be deterministic. You're like, why?
Yeah, that's so funny. Cool. Well, did anyone else have any other code review experience they'd like to share, or code review questions?
I feel like showing off someone else's good work.
Oh, that's a beautiful idea.
Who probably is asleep right now, so wouldn't actually be able to attend this. I had this idea just now, so give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I found the thing. Oops. Paste the link here.
What are you eating, Chad?
I'm in a bed and breakfast in the middle of the Yucatan. It's delicious stuff.
Delicious stuff. Okay. That's my favorite thing to order at a restaurant. It looks beautiful.
I'll refine my comment in the document later.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
I will, let's share the screen now. So absolutely no preparation here. Apologies for that. I'll click my own link. Yeah. All right, so we have this change here. It's a security change. And so we made a choice that there was this, the difference between tags and releases sometimes was not always clear. And we decided that even if you don't have access to the source code repository, you can have access to releases unless you actually check the, like in the project settings, you can say releases are for project members only. And in this MR, there was this change. Let's go into this view, where we just, let's have more code. So when the repository is disabled, we use to disable releases because they kind of were linked together. But with this new way of thinking, this is not true anymore. So the MR simply removed that line, which made a ton of sense. But Shenya noticed that projects where they currently, because the data in the database, because we're making this change now, there could be projects in the past that would now have their stuff revealed and they never asked for it. So that was a good catch, where making a change now, it makes sense. Like if you create a project today with this code, everything is fine. But just having this thought of how do our historical data behave now that this change happens.
That's a really good point. Wow.
And yeah, and sometimes this in this specific case was this would have caused a sort of minor but still security issue, but this causes real bugs, like just functional bugs as well. Sometimes you just break projects because you're like, oh no, this data actually doesn't work with our new models.
Right.
So yeah, that was a good catch, and just really thinking, okay, like this change makes sense now. I tested it, spun up my GDK, create a project, click, yeah, everything's fine. But does it work on a 5 years old project? And yeah, well, it was a great catch by Shinya.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so easy to treat like new features or changes just on top of like what we view our GDK as being really thin and having no projects, and we're just looking at new projects. But thinking about how the changes affect long-lasting projects is critical.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for highlighting this.
So before we merged this, a migration was created to make sure the data was populated for all historical projects.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a quick question then. So there's release access level, but
I'm going to I'll have to reread it myself. I have like this thought, I need to process it again.
Well, no, my biggest question is like, if we realize, okay, we've split up permissions, but then now we're going to combine them. But I'm clearly not understanding everything that's going on here. But at what instance do we need to notify users and current project owners things they thought were private are now going to be maybe more public?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, because of this migration, everything's going to kind of stay as it was. Okay. We're just switching the people who had this disabled. We kind of switched the other switch so that the behavior stays the same.
Got it. Got it. So
So there's nobody is going to notice the difference. Though now that you mention it, like someone who would be used to that behavior would create a new project and now things might behave differently. I think here the change was minor enough that
yeah.
it doesn't require a widespread notification. Otherwise, that would be, I guess, like a breaking change notification on a major version.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, what this is interesting. This is a really interesting example.
Could I give a contribution along those lines?
Please do.
I'm going to drop in the doc a link. Exploratory testing book. Explore it. And exploratory testing is a great practice. This is a book by my friend Elizabeth Hendrickson, who is a master at this. Like if you watch her exploratory test something, things like this she'll find, just the question she asks, and there's a methodical way to go about it in this book, but asking these sorts of questions like, what does this do for previous users? How does it change the behavior? And tons of other things. And this is a great practice in addition to, that really complements code review. Like, how can I poke at this and break it? And watching her like do live exploratory testing, for example, like in a seminar is amazing. Like she'll take your code and she'll like, what if I poke it here? And then, what if I poke it here? And you're like, you're breaking my code in ways that I didn't even know there was code. How did you find that?
Oh man, wow, that's cool. Does she? Is this also with dive into like white box testing techniques where you see the code? Or
and like at Pivotal, where she helped us a lot. We had at the pairing station just handouts that were lists of things that you could go through when exploratory testing to try, security, around usability, and other things like that. It's sort of a heuristics and reminders to poke things. That might be, a good addition to reviewer checklist or something in our handbook, maybe.
That's a good idea. And I think, this exploratory testing bit is like the most important thing I feel like we do as reviewers. Linting catches most of the stuff. We hire really good engineers that catches a good amount of other stuff.
Right. And like this is an area that just it can't really be covered by automated testing, but it's extremely important, right? At top of the pyramid test, you don't want to have a ton of those because they're so expensive and flaky. And the bottom unit tests that the developers write, you always have a blind spot because it's your code. I'm not going to imagine the bugs that I haven't found because I don't have a good imagination. It's my code.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the is this known channel should be renamed like exploratory testing channel because it's literally what people are doing. And a lot of the time they catch things that can't be caught through automation. A lot of the stuff I honestly wouldn't notice even if I saw it, is like the spacing of things just as a backend developer. I guess
you have a testing background, so you're really good at this,
I
Terry.
mean, I love breaking stuff. That I approach MRs by like, how can I try to break this? Which is like, I don't know if that's a good way or a bad way, but I just feel like the way that
You're a hacker.
we are really good at breaking stuff. So that's what I try to do when I'm reviewing things.
Yeah, it's a good way. There's a very classic joke of like the QA engineer goes to the bar and orders 0 beers and 99,000 beers and all that. The first user goes to the bar and asks where the bathroom is, and it catches on flames and explodes. Yeah, no, exploratory. I was trying to find a picture of it, but the testing pyramid, there's diagrams of it with the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid. That what is it? The what are those? The Freemason.
The Freemasons.
Yeah. um, Meaning of just like that expert-driven exploratory testing is so important at knowing what needs to be pushed down the automation testing pyramid. And yeah,
That's a great visual. Like the omnipotent eye is like above the pyramid. It's outside the pyramid.
yeah. But it's I think different organizations treat this so differently. It's like you can get a QA tester that's looking at the requirements, doesn't see the code at all, and is trying to punch at it as they would expect a user would. But as software engineers, like we tend to lean more towards being comfortable with the code and less of putting ourselves in like the user's shoes. But I want to check out. I'm probably going to get the book that you mentioned, Chad. It's like I love. That's my favorite way to review code. If I see a function and I'm like, there might be issues here, it's like, okay, I need to try to, from the user's perspective, reveal why this approach doesn't work or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Elizabeth's been doing this for decades, probably. I'm sure she's got some good videos, conference presentations and stuff online too that we could refer to.
that's really cool. And I'd love to get some more language and ideas about that. And I think that's where this expert-driven exploratory testing, QA and UX are really good at being empathetic with the user, but us engineers should be really able to really understand the code and be experts at the code, and that gives a whole new perspective on what to test and what things could go wrong. That's really cool. Thanks for bringing this up, Chad. Thanks for the recommendation. All right. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add to code review, show and tell, and questions? Okay. Well, this brings us to the part of the episode where we sing a song. No, where we do code review pairing. Does anyone have any code review that they want to pair on? We can all pair on together. I have one, but it'd be a front end one. And it's removing a feature flag, so it's kind of relevant to.
I'm looking to see what I have queued up. At least I don't have 7, so that was good.
I'm gonna be honest, Terry. I feel like you're holding back on me.
Oh, okay. This one's all deletes of code, so I guess
That's where I'm at too.
no. I mean, yeah, this one it's like I think it adds one line and deletes 158. So I don't think that one's pretty interesting.
Oh, it's all interesting.
I don't know what else I have access to.
I mean, that is an interesting case because how do you
Look
know
at
that
it?
the
I
de-
have not looked at it, so this is a completely. I
unused.
sat down this morning and this is in my queue. We can look at it if you want, and then y'all can help me do my work.
Let's do it.
And that's
Yes.
pretty cool.
Yes, that's the intent. Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
Are-
I am assigned as a database reviewer. I would say I am not super, and I'll get it up on my screen in a second. I am not at the point where I even want to try to become a database maintainer. That's where I'm at with my database review skills right now. So we'll see how this goes.
Okay. Wow. This is great.
And let me make it a little bit bigger because screen size. Okay. So this is removing an old backfill projects with coverage migration for the CI decomposition. From what I can tell, I guess this is related to when we move the CI database tables to like their own database. Any migrations before 15 that don't change the schema can be no off, as we assume they must already.
This is really interesting. Like what I used to do on Rails project is like we would periodically collapse the migrations, like things that were
Yeah.
more than a year old. We just collapsed them into, it was basically just a single initial schema. And then you didn't have to worry about this sort of stuff, like the data was there or not.
So we don't do that here.
Yeah, it might be a good idea. It would avoid, issues like this even needing to exist.
No.
I think we do a level of that. Let me see at our migrations folder, like what our latest
Yeah.
one is.
I know, like, we do that. Elasticsearch has migrations that we've been writing for the search team, and we do that every milestone. We like mark them as obsolete at the dot release, like the .0 release, so that, okay, once you get to this point, we can assume everything else has been run.
Anyway, that's not directly related to review. We don't have to talk about that.
That's
Well, I
okay.
Well, no, yeah, it's a good question though. It does look like we do something similar. So it's like our earliest DB migrate is 2021 March 1st. I think
Okay, so we do that.
I think that's
And that
when
should be like a giant one with like the whole schema in it, right? As of that point in time.
it is a really small file because it reads from init structure SQL. Yeah, so it's got to be really big.
Okay, so yeah, there you go. We do that. It's maybe not often enough to solve this
Well,
one.
when it says old, because that's a good question, because it's saying this is an old migration. It's not that old, right?
This one, no, it's not 2021-08.
So maybe that's the answer for this one. Like rather than deal with these things, just do a collapse, to the last supported release, whatever, however old that is. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I think, so I'm not gonna look at, this is all just deleting code. I guess the question, and it's not so much, I guess for me, the question of like, is this code fine? Because all they're doing is marking it as a no op. And deleting the related specs. I guess for me, it would just be, if I was gonna review this, I'm looking at what, I guess what issue it's trying to fix. Oh, this is a year old. Okay. And there's 2 background migrations. Looks like one of them's already been taken care of.
We will not update older background migrations to work properly with decomposed databases.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the reasoning is this saying basically if anything that's been run before, everything that, let me see. This migration was merged in 14.3, so this should already be run before upgrading to 15.x. And then why it's being removed because of the active record-based connection, creating a CI table. And while it could be fixed, it's simpler to just remove it.
Because we forced them to upgrade to major versions incrementally, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Right.
they have to go to like 14, whatever the last 14 before they get to 15.0. And so that makes sense.
This is like going from Windows 7 to Windows 8.
Just throw the computer out the window at that point.
But there's no Windows 9, is there? Is there Windows 9? There's not. It went straight to Windows 10, I think.
I don't think I ever did a major Windows upgrade. You always just reinstall. You have to reinstall Windows like every 6 months anyway, at least in the old days.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a feature.
You got to
I
kick
think
off
for
the
this,
hackers
I
who compromise your machine.
Exactly.
I think for this, I'm inclined to just approve this. I'm just as the reviewer role, but I think this is fine.
So
I
are there
also-
no schema changes in it? You're
There's no
100%.
schema changes.
Okay.
It's just deleting the migration code here. And then this is just all the related specs that got deleted. So I think
Yeah.
this is probably fine. A lot of the times as the reviewer for the database, I will say, like, I'll do my best. I don't feel super comfortable to become a maintainer. So a lot of times I do try to follow what happens later to see what the maintainer says. We have some very thorough database maintainers who
Yeah.
are very good at SQL. And they often have like leave a lot of good, like insightful comments. So
Can I ask you two challenging questions?
oh,
Um, okay. One being, would you leave any questions? Like, do you have any questions for this MR?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess because like reading through this, Dylan's left a lot of good information about like what happens if someone's running an old version. So that question would be answered, like what happens if somebody upgrades to 15.0? Could this cause them, or 15.6, could this cause them problems? And if they followed the proper migration path, they shouldn't have any issues.
Well, I think yeah, you're right. They wouldn't, because they would have to go from 14.0 to 15.0. And so that means this is included in 15.0, right?
This would be included. This is included. This was merged in 14.3. So as long as they've gotten past that, and I guess if they were on 14.1 and if they wanted to go to 15x, they would have to get to 14.11 or 12 or 10 or whatever the last one is. I forget, because we had 1 year where there was like 12 and 1 year there was 10 not releases. So I confused about how many we have. But either way, I feel like because it was in I think if this was in like the last, I don't know if there's a release that it could be in that would cause it to not be run before they upgraded. I don't think so.
So if a customer was on 14.0 and then upgraded, do they have to upgrade to 15.0 before upgrading to 15.6? Or could they go 14.0 straight to 15.6?
I think they have to go to the last version of 14 before they can go up, but I
Oh,
don't
really?
know. I think
Okay.
so.
Well, and maybe this is a question of like, maybe we could look it up, but
Yeah.
maybe also to just save time of asking a question, just a clarifying question of, if a customer is on 14.0,
Yeah.
are they able to migrate straight to 15.6, and would this cause an issue because of that?
Okay.
I'm
I
on
have-
our upgrade path page, and seems pretty complicated. It's like
Yeah,
14.012
I
to
have
46, 14.95, 14.10, 15.
Oh, so they have to do all of these in steps? Is that
Yeah, I don't think you can go direct from a major version
Yeah.
to major version. You have to go, at least that's with our migrations, like we rely upon the fact that you have to get to like here, 14.10 before you can move
so
beyond it.
Wow.
I added a link in the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
like that's really the only, it's not possible to do it otherwise. It's
Yeah,
impossible
because
to find all the edge cases that could happen.
yeah. And I think almost you should see, I don't know how they these numbers of where you have to go to, but at least when you're going to like a earlier version and a target version, yeah, there it shows you kind of like where you do have to get to this like last 14 version.
Like
Wow.
a choose your own adventure book.
And I think part of it is because when we do all the like big breaking changes in 15, they don't like, you try to, everything has to still work. Like the release or two before that, or I think the previous release still has to kind of like work
Right.
to get them there. So I guess that would be my only, that would have been my only question, but since I felt like because I have experience with like developing for the upgrade paths, I would feel
Yeah,
okay
you
just
felt good.
saying yes to
That's good.
this.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
The other thing I was thinking might be helpful is looking at that migration file. It's be kind of weird to have checked in
this.
migration that has 2 no ops. Like the history of it is confusing. So maybe leaving a comment to an issue, or leaving a comment.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Like, should we leave a comment here?
I think that would be helpful for people that like aren't familiar with migrations like myself. I'm gonna get into like I'm gonna get really confused when I realize that migrations can change.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like the Git history. Like you could just rebase master if you really need to. It's okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just leave that, and then we can see what the maintainer says as well.
Cool. Yeah.
But that's a good point. I don't always think about, I sometimes do. I guess sometimes I'll leave questions to be like, should we leave this here for any future developers who come in and say, what happened here?
I also think of just community contributors sometimes just look for things that they can just clean up. And so finding comments that like are no-op, they might look at that whole file and be like, oh, maybe I could just delete this. And
Yeah.
that, I don't know.
That's a good point. Okay. I like
Yeah,
it.
like it's also why do we even need to keep the file? Why do we not delete the file? Like as a side note, I've been my partner's learning Django and their migrations are way cooler than Rails actually. Like they say which one they depend on rather than just like relying on the name of the file. But point being, why do we even need to keep this around if it's a no-op? Can we just delete it? I don't know the answer.
I don't know.
Maybe there's a reason, but maybe you could ask that too.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like when the last time I used to have problems with my last job in Java, if you like deleted migration files and there was like some schema table database. I don't know if we
Oh
have
yeah,
that
you're right.
here.
The schema migrations keeps the
There's
record
like some
of it
sort
and it
of
may blow
table
up.
that
Yep.
would like be like, "Bleh, nope, there's something missing.
Yeah, schema migration says what you've already run. and
Okay.
I
I
think
would
it wouldn't break if it referred to something not there, but it's best to leave it.
Okay. But that is a good question. And honestly, I didn't know the answer. I knew the answer for my last job because of broke stuff. I didn't know the answer here. Didn't break it in production at least. So that's always a good thing. But I will leave this note for them. I don't know if I have any other reviews, but what I'll probably do is approve it and then pass it on to the maintainer and see what they think. I don't know if I have any other MRs. I can
Oh, that's
pass
fine.
the MR.
Yeah. No, this is an interesting one. I think this
Thank you for letting me finally share a database one, even though it wasn't like the most involved database one.
Oh my gosh. No, this was incredibly
The
daunting.
pipeline
That's
failed.
good.
There, I see good eyes from Kasia. The pipeline failed. That's another thing that maybe we should look at. Oh, it is related.
Related.
No method error. Oh, this
Migrations, validation, migration.
is it from this migration?
How old is the pipeline? What's 50?
I don't know. Hold on. 15 hours ago.
I was running into all sorts of really weird migration failures when on the fail fast job.
This is it. Yeah, this is the fail fast job. Maybe I'll retry it and see if
These seem they're migration related, but they're unrelated to this migration.
yeah, it looked like it was multiple migrations. But I'll give it a whirl and see if that fixes it.
Are there any like model properties that we're removing in that migration up? No.
Yeah, and I think that wasn't the CI, but that was really good. I didn't see. I feel like shouldn't this have been red? Oh, maybe not. When the pipeline is red. Maybe
Oh, what's
not.
interesting is this is also
No, it doesn't. I thought that was true for like the first almost 2 years I was here. It's just whether it's open or closed or
That's so weird. I
merged.
feel like there's some view where it turns something. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I wish there was something up here that would show me this has a bad state of some sort, because it's from like this view, it's just you can't. There's no visual like indication that there's a broken.
It's
pipeline.
the
down
pipeline
here
down
somewhere.
there. The first thing right above that, like that thing, the merge results pipeline.
This. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, shoot.
can
I didn't want to read down that far, I guess. But yeah, I'll make
Really
sure
nice
this
question.
pipeline is passing, and I think at least One other thing I've noticed from the reviewer side is I have stopped using the rebase. I don't know if anyone else has. I do not rebase for other people anymore. I'll start a new pipeline and that is it, because otherwise you can't merge.
Yeah.
So I
same.
don't know how that's going to play itself out, but I have,
We had a discussion about that yesterday in the maintainers meeting, right?
Yeah, that's causing some general maintainer reviewing grief.
supposedly you could just start a new pipeline. And that's supposed to fix things. I don't know if that's the case all the time. And there are other reasons you want to rebase besides that.
Yeah, there's some pipeline failures that seem to require a rebase. I don't know what the distinguishing factor is between those.
I mean, there's a lot of them. It's if you're like, since we don't use merge trains, there's many scenarios that
Yeah.
you
But we
know
do
the
merge
state of the
result.
world, it doesn't match what's on your branch, or you got a flake in or something.
But we do merged result pipelines.
Hmm?
Like every time we start a new pipeline, we'll do a new merged result. But for most situations, if like a broken master can get fixed on my MR by rerunning the pipeline. But these days I found master just be so flaky in all sorts of ways. It's like I rerun it and different jobs have failed. I don't know. Yeah,
Cassia had a question in the chat. Do we still review MRs with broken pipelines?
that's a really
Yeah, I thought it was a good question. So I say what I do. I often do review MRs with broken pipelines, but then I also look at the pipeline to see, does it look related? And whether or not it is related is like, I either leave the comment that, oh, the pipelines don't look related, but can you double check? Or, hey, this pipeline failure looks related. Can you check? So either way, the person is going to check, but I think it's still, I usually still review it.
What were we gonna say, Chad?
It says in the handbook, I don't know if my internet's cutting out, but it says in the handbook, it's okay to ask for reviews early. So
Yeah.
the pipeline may be broken.
Yeah. I also sometimes ask for review while the pipeline's still running the first time. Well,
Yeah.
if it's a small enough change, I'm like, okay, let me get the review process started, and then I'll come back like the next day and be like, oh, oops, I missed a test or something. But most of the reviewers will still review it.
Yeah, as part of the efficiency value, you should totally be fine with doing that, in my opinion. And it says so in the handbook.
But piggybacking on the efficiency value, if a pipeline is broken and it's clear that this would probably significantly change the approach because it's like super broken or broken in an unrepairable way, or it has legitimate issues with it, it's probably when there's a broken pipeline that might be best to be the first thing you look at of, do I even need to contribute more time into this because maybe this whole path has been invalidated. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, it's just chores that need to be done.
And if it's depends on the type of review, if it's an initial review or an unrelated domain specific review, then I'd say, okay, it's fine to let that start, but not necessarily a maintainer review.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, Todas, I don't know. Thanks for hanging out and talking about code review. Yeah, I know we're a little early, but I'm fine with ending early. If someone has any other questions or comments they want to bring up, otherwise we can call it. Oh yeah, what's up?
I don't know if you heard me.
I did it.
before.
I'm so sorry. I was just gonna talk
That's
right
all
over
right.
you and drive the bus over the edge. Sorry, that's not a good analogy.
My internet is not the best these days, so cuts off sometimes. It's weird. Yeah, I was wondering, when we do a code review, is there like a hard limit? Like, please do not ping more than 2 or 3 people on a MR just because we try to save people's time or whatever the case is. Yeah, just wondering what.
Oh, why would pinging multiple people save more time? So I want to get more context with the question.
I guess so. Like I'm working on a PR on an MR currently, and I was thinking to ping a few people in my team to have a look before I actually request a review from outside of the team, because people in the team might have a little bit more context on what's going on. And but then I thought that maybe it is against the efficiency value, for example, like people spending time on reviewing my code, given that they probably have multiple MRs to be reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, like, what do people do on this call? Like, do you review code that you were not pinged about, or do you always wait for a ping on the actual MR?
That's a good question. Terry, Chad, or Dominic, do you have anything to add to the?
I would say, like, you can always, nobody's obligated to do a review. If you're too busy for it, you can just say no. So I would never feel bad about asking for a review. Like if somebody else or if like 3 people have already reviewed it, then it's fine. And you're just asking, like, if you don't have a good reason, but I'm sure that's not the situation you're talking about. You're really wanting to get more insight into it. So I don't think there's any problem with asking. What do you think, Terry?
So yeah, I think I often will queue up a few reviewers at once, but it depends. If I think a review might change the approach, I might hold off on asking too many people, because then you don't want to have to go back and be like, oh, you've already reviewed this, but then like everything changed. So I hate to say it depends, because I feel like that's a very bad answer, but I do look at like what's happening. Sometimes I do want to queue up like documentation review and a back-end review and maybe a front-end review because if I'm getting all 3 of those, it could take a while.
All the different domains, I always do them all at
Yeah.
once. Like
I queue them up,
when I
but
think it's ready.
sometimes, UX review, sometimes I'll ask for that first just to make sure that's gotten the okay. And then I kind of like fan out from there, because I'm not that good at doing the front end stuff. So I'm like, okay, please like make sure this looks okay before I get the other reviews. But yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to ask one person. Nobody is gonna be upset about it.
Yeah, I've some advice on this topic. Because I think if I interpret your question correctly, it was not necessarily about pinging the reviewers for different domains, but almost like I have backend engineers on my team and the review bot backend engineer and the maintainer. I could ping them all at once. I could ping multiple backend engineers at the same time to review it. And my bit of advice would be, if I wanted an MR to never get looked at, I would ping, instead of pinging a person, I would ping 2 people.
Bystander effect.
Oh my gosh, it is so real. So I would officially assign a domain expert if I feel like this needs a domain expert review. And sometimes it's in my team. I really need you to review this. And if they can't, they'll say, I can't get to this. Go ahead and just go to the main reviewer. It's like, okay, that's fine. But will just ping people to FYI, we're making this change here. And I think you may want to be aware of this, but I'm not expecting you to look at this. So pings also have like a different weight to them. Of sometimes I'm just CCing as FYI, I'm changing this code that you kind of just touched, and here's why. It shouldn't affect you, but you need to be aware of this. That happens a lot. But for your own efficiency, I recommend not pinging multiple backend engineers and asking anybody to pick it up, because from experience that doesn't get picked up.
Yeah, it happens in Slack too. Like when you're trying, I've had that happen to me where I'm like, can anyone help me with this? You don't get any answers. So I'm gonna have to go find someone directly with whatever experience and ask for direct help.
Yeah,
I would say also, like, if you get in a backend review from your team, that's the DRI, that counts as the initial backend review to me. And then as a maintainer, I would say, fine, everything looks good. So you wouldn't need to get the reviewer from the backend if you already have someone from your team.
I think one more point I'd make is like it depends on the nature of the MR. For example, one I have right now, it's like a brand new CI job that's sort of a weird case, not like any other pre-existing one. And I broke master on the first attempt at it, like with doctoral EMRs and FOF. And so I'm taking a second shot at it. And the rules are really hard to understand, and there's no way to easily test them. So I'm definitely like gonna try to ask multiple people to look at this. Like, I really don't know. I think it's right this time, but I don't know. And it's such a niche of domain context that it's actually I'm having a hard time finding people to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good example. You asked a good question in the chat too, Cassia. Do you want to verbalize it?
Sure. So I was also wondering whether pinging or requesting a review from the creator of the issue, whether that is recommended or not. Because in my personal opinion, like if someone created the issue, they have the biggest knowledge or context on that particular change. But what if the creator is actually like a maintainer and not a backend engineer? So like, if you know what I mean, like I then get I get deferred to someone else saying, oh, I'm not the first level backend,
Yeah.
etc.
Let me start by we should feel free to ping anybody at any time. And if anybody ever says, don't ping me yet, this hasn't been reviewed by someone of a lower caliber than me, that's a culture issue. And everyone should be receptive to getting pinged at any time. So but when you do ping someone, it's really helpful. If I got pinged to review something, I'm going to automatically think it's for a front-end maintainer review. So it'd be really helpful if you want me to ping something to review it as an issue author, adding that context like, hey, could you check this out from this perspective? That's so helpful. But at the same time, I create lots of issues and I'm not the expert at the issue. So because of our efficiency value, everyone can contribute. And so lots of people end up, hey, I found something weird. Here's an issue. Team, go take care of it. And so sometimes the author may not necessarily be the best person to validate that.
But in terms of exploratory testing, they at least know what the bug or the feature is supposed to look like. So from that perspective, there may be one of the best people to review it.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to say, I don't remember last time I opened an issue that I was actually an expert at. I just do that all the time.
I think regardless of who opened it, most people are like overjoyed to see that somebody finally fixed an issue they opened, regardless of whether they know about it. So I don't think anybody would ever be mad.
Yeah, I do really like that idea. Like I realize I don't really respond on issues a lot either. Like I need to, especially if we get issues open from the community, I think that would just mean a whole lot to them if we included them in the MR and just let them be a part of the whole collaborative process. That's a really cool idea. I love that idea. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I hadn't really thought of that.
And another relevant thing is like, for example, the GitLab flavor mark and all of the scripts and stuff. It has like a very small subset of users. It's like Brett Walker on the team and Himanshu and Enrique on the content editor. Like they're the main ones using this right now. So when I'm doing big changes like reorganizing the files or the names or stuff, I'll just give them a heads up, say like, I don't need a review, but this is just an informal, let you know this is happening. And if I'm doing anything you really don't like, let me know.
Yeah, and that communication can happen on the MR or even in Slack too. Is like those are all helpful means of communication on that. Yeah, I find a good way. Sometimes going back, you kind of open a can of worms. I'm gonna have to close it to get people's attention. When I was like, I don't want to assign it to a specific person, but I need some random person in a group. I'll often ping the engineering manager, like, hey, can someone on your team help out with this?
It's not a bad idea because, yeah, or the PM or the engineering manager, someone that's like tied to like feature like completion, like
do that with-
tracking things.
That helps me triage community contributions a lot easier because I just have to identify what group is this touching. And then rather than me picking the engineer, I'm just going to pick the engineering manager and they'll be able to.
Yeah, I definitely
From
go and like
security,
just randomly
our
pick people
process.
sometimes. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Dominic.
Yeah, no, I have a little delay, so sometimes I speak in over people. Sorry. In security, that's basically our process to like find the team that owns the feature and say, hey, EM/PM, we have this. Please schedule it. so yeah, at least know
Maybe I
that
should
if you're
start
not
doing that.
doing it, there's an entire team that does that. So.
Let me ask you a quick question, Dominic, and then we're getting close to time. I was here berating the bystander effect, but that's kind of how security reviews are handled. We just ping the security group, and someone from the security team hops on it. How do you all?
Have someone assigned. Every week, there's a person who's on rotation to handle all the AppSec pings. Every time AppSec is ping, we have a Slack bot that posts in our channel. So either the person on rotation does the review or redirects it to the AppSec engineer who's closest to that piece of code.
Okay. Do they is that all that they're focused on that week?
Is the main focus. It is accepted that you won't get any deep work done that week.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Thanks everybody for the interesting discussion. I've got a
This was a good one.
yeah. There are always good ones, but I guess this was a recent good one. I'll catch you all next time. Adios.
Que tengas un buen día.
See.